and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. We'll be jumping into some news out of the LibertyBeat.com, BenSwan.com, and the FreeThoughtProject.com coming up here soon. So, government ordering banks to call cops when customers withdraw 5,000 or more. Going to get into one out of Ben Swan talking about the spying and the Patriot Act and the bulk phone spying, basically. So we'll be getting into that and a few other articles I do want to cover out of BenSwan.com. But we will get into that. And one that has to deal with your health, Monsanto, and the World Health Organization. And that one coming out of Liberty Beat. And then there's a few other articles hopefully I can get to. But before we get into those, I got a clip here I want to play. Let me bring it back up. And this one shouldn't really be a surprise to most people. But Clinton Foundation's top foreign donor, Ukrainian oligarch. We should know by now that people that are trying to play positions of power throughout the world collaborate with each other. That, that's part of the UN. That's, world organizations that a lot of these people create that operate in multiple countries. Therefore, it kind of acts as a government over the governments. And we know, the CFR, Trilateral Commission, all these organizations are the ones that are coming up with the ideas that are then carried out usually by the governments. And, a lot of the world bankers are usually a part of all those type of organizations too. You see all these people mingle. Now, you have to understand, just like in everyday life where people don't get along and disagree on things and fight amongst each other, this happens at these levels too. But when it comes down, they do come together when, you have now the West fighting Russia and China. And we having this type of financial Cold War, World War. And I say World War because of what's going on in the Middle East, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Russia, what's happening in Ukraine. When you start looking at the whole big picture, you can see how all of these things are coming to a head. And if most people like to say, terrorism isn't and wasn't that big of a deal, even during 9/11, that was a freak out. Whatever your thoughts on it, what has progressed over that time has empowered and I believe influenced people to join with these radical groups because they thought America was going to come in and save, and then now they're getting their doors kicked down because their dad lives at home, and because he's a male and could fight, we might want to interrogate him. Not saying that they weren't trying to do a legitimate job, but you have to understand the impact on different cultures from your culture, and you acting in this way, they could go, well, at least, those people weren't kicking down my door. But you show up to save me and my door gets kicked down. It's kind of the same sentiment that most Americans are starting to feel against the police here in America. And, that there's people that legitimately want to help and help society and be a good influence on society that join the police forces, but they fail to comprehend that what they're tasked to do does not coincide with that what they want to do. But talking about the whole world, you have the Clinton Foundation top donor is a Ukrainian oligarch. So I'm going to play this clip here from AMTV. Give me a second here as it queues up.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. You're watching the brightest, hardest-hitting show on the planet. And I have a report today on Hillary Rodham Clinton. On Tuesday, March 24, 2015. I took a little notes because I don't read a teleprompter. I wanted to make sure I got all these facts correct to expose the whore that makes up not just Hillary Clinton, but really her potential and soon-to-be entire administration. Now, keep in mind, she operated as Secretary of State and has been in and out of the White House courtesy of her husband for years. So, won't it be nice to get a fresh face in 2016? It's kind of looking more and more like an oligarchy. Clinton, 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 Bush, 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 which is a perfect segue into the story I'm about to discuss. Hillary Clinton Foundation funding linked to Ukrainian oligarchs. Isn't that interesting? In fact, there was a Wall Street Journal article, which this is linked to, which was overlooked, of course, by the mainstream media and the populace. It is too busy engaged in the matrix to really understand the truth about what's really going on in the world. Geopolitics, the overthrow and coup d'etat in Ukraine, courtesy of the United States federal government, had nothing to do with Russia at all. Russia didn't invade. Vladimir Putin didn't invade Crimea and then annex Crimea. None of that actually happened. It was a coup d'etat, courtesy of the United States federal government. And here is an article to prove it from the Wall Street Journal that, of course, the masses overlooked. Hillary Clinton has deep ties to a very specific oligarch in the name of Victor Pinchuk and his foundation, who has donated millions and millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton and her charitable foundation. In fact, it's interesting, if you pull a bar chart in the Wall Street Journal, they actually did it for you, it'll show the single largest donor happens to be Ukraine. From 2009 to 2013, at least $8.6 million was donated from Viktor Pinchuk and his foundation based in Kiev to Hillary Clinton's foundation. In 2008, he pledged over the next 5 years to donate over $29 million was the commitment to the Clinton Global Initiative, with the aim to modernize Ukraine and train future Ukrainian leaders to mimic and create a Ukraine that is modern, that is modernized in the shape and image of the European Union. Isn't that interesting? Not only is this oligarch who's been donating millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton's foundation, not just one of the people in one of the countries, but the largest donor with over $10 million donated and pledged, according to the Wall Street Journal, over this specific time period of 1999 to 2014, also had ties and was a former parliamentarian to the Ukrainian government, served 2 terms. So isn't that interesting? Why Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she receives tens of millions of dollars from Kiev, Ukraine. And they just happened to have a revolution in 2014. But I thought Vladimir Putin had created and instituted the destabilization effort in Ukraine. I thought he was responsible for invading. Well, it turns out none of that is true, because all you have to do is follow the money and see where it's coming from. Several of the alumni that were part of this modernization effort, which they say is charity, according to the Clinton Foundation, are now members of the new Ukrainian parliament. Isn't that also convenient? So the same people donating funds to Hillary Clinton in the tens of millions of dollars are the actual people now running the government. You see, it's not an accusation when I say things, or the alternative media says things like it was a U.S.-sponsored led coup d'etat in Ukraine, that the U.S. violently and illegally overthrew an independent sovereign nation, a democratically elected leader in the name of Viktor Yanukovych, and then installed an American puppet in the name of Petro Poroshenko. None of that is conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. It's just the hardcore truth of the matter. You know, it's kind of like Benghazi Gate. Remember Hillary Clinton said in the Obama administration, while she was Secretary of State, that the incident occurred as the result of a YouTube video called Innocent of Muslims, pointing fun at Islam and their religion, only to find out later that that was total bullshit. It was an utter lie. In fact, the gentleman that made the film went to jail, not because he made the film, because he didn't pay taxes or something. They got him on some kind of different and lesser charge. All of it was a bold-faced lie. Just like it's a bold-faced lie, all this rhetoric and propaganda being built around the idea that Putin in Russia is responsible for the instability in Ukraine, when it's actually, in actuality, the exact opposite. It's people like Hillary Clinton that they're urging you to vote for in 2016. Yeah, elect the oligarchs, folks. It'd be great to get a new face in charge, like we haven't seen Clinton before. These people are responsible for the civil war we're seeing in Ukraine. These people are responsible for this global instability, whether or not it's the government-led, sponsored, and funded Arab Spring movement and protests, the cover-up that made up Benghazi Gate, or the recent revolution in 2014 in Ukraine. Because, of course, Ukraine is a chess piece in this global geopolitical game. I did a story on this yesterday with the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, how major U.S. allies, maybe former, like the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, other countries like Switzerland, there's some 25, 30 countries on board now, joining a competitor to the World Bank and the IMF. In fact, the World Bank and the IMF, Christine Lagarde, actually, they have to join now, too, so that they can have some influence. The United States losing to the East. Ukrainian chess piece, because, again, it's a major exportation route of natural gas and petroleum-related products, namely coming from Russia, of which Putin has enjoyed a monopoly for years, and a very cozy relationship with the previous rightfully democratically elected leader in the name of Viktor Yanukovych, all that moving to, guess who, the European Union and the collapsing Eurozone. You know, countries that are on their way out, like Greece, with a Grexit going broke, needing more funding in April. The next tranche due, the major tranches due in June and July, trying to negotiate that bailout. Historians, I've said this many times before, will tell you that with Russia's control of Ukraine, they're an empire. But without it, they're simply a country. Here we have gross evidence presented by the Wall Street Journal. Tens of millions of dollars coming from, they say, individuals linked with direct previous engagements, relationships, and posts in the Ukrainian government itself. The single largest donor over the time period I just mentioned, coming from Ukraine, based in Kiev, a former parliamentarian, an oligarch who made his money in the pipe making business, donating to the Clinton Foundation, who was actively pushing for a coup d'etat himself, for what they call modernization. You know, they use all these terms, modernization. We're going to liberate the Middle East. You know, Operation Iraqi Freedom. It really just means war. It really just means revolution. It really just means illegal sponsored U.S. activity in these sovereign independent nations. It's what the United States does best. Go to war.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. You know, this is something that we've been talking about. And if we look at it in any other way, if this was happening to us, that we had Russia, China, the Middle East, Ukraine, Great Britain, any of them bringing in an army or launching bombs on the U.S. to free us from our rightfully so corrupt government, we still wouldn't stand for it. Why? Because aggression towards the little man without ever going after the, top people, it just proves that you have other motives. And I think that's been proven. And, back to the whole thing about, Russia without Ukraine is just a country, but Russia with Ukraine would be an empire. What does that make us when we help orchestrate the coups? When, the people that the Clinton Foundation's tied to are the ones that, were part of the coup. The people that Hillary Clinton in the State Department stand next to. Well, that shows that, we're in effect in the empire, and the bigger the empire grows, the harder that the empire will fall, because all empires do collapse. And the bigger the empire, the bigger the collapse, and a lot of times the more distress that a populace will see. And getting into talking about American Empire, I have one here from Ron Paul, a green light for the American Empire. And I wanted to go ahead and play this one here.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Ron Paul Liberty Report. I'm Ron Paul, the host.
And I'm Daniel McAdams, your co-host. Dr. Paul, I noticed you've written a new article that's just come out. It's really very interesting. It's the green light for the American Empire, and you really trace this big push for the American Empire back to 1990.
That's right. And there are other people right now writing articles about the 25-year war, 1990, something different happened. And I've been fascinated with that date. So I went back thinking about how important it is. Actually, I learned some things by just checking on this current history, because I have always believed that the most significant political, especially a geopolitical item in my lifetime was the downfall of the Soviet Union. And I never realized how closely connected the downfall of the Soviet Union was to the tremendous growth of the American empire. You know, we've been around and we've been building and we've been overseas for a long time, and we've had our Cold War and the competition all going on. But all of a sudden, there was an amazing amount of connections starting in 89, but really in 90, some of the events that came together. But, you know, our friend Michael Rosef has written about this, and he calls his dates sort of coincide with what I'm talking about, in that the war that we're in started in 1990. We didn't get our peace dividend. It looks like the military-industrial complex got their dividend out of this. So we didn't usher in a great time for peace, and he called it war. The Great War II. Yeah. And he called the Great War I was, you know, Woodrow Wilson's World War I, the Great War for making the world safe for democracy. So he dated from 1914, and he called it the end of that in 1990. And now we're in that second war of making the world. And of course, he's not very optimistic about it either. And then somebody else has a page out that does it constantly. They call it the Long War. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's a pretty good name, too. But I came up with the name. It's never easy to come up with the perfect name. But I guess a little wishful thinking on my part, I want to call it the Last War. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, this is the last war that we're going to have, where it's designed to just grow grow an empire and then see the destruction of the empire and have constant Cold Wars and whatnot. So I want it to be the last war, but only time will tell on this. But just very briefly, some of the dates that I came across that I'm sure you're very familiar with, but to me it was amazing how they came together. And you know, 89, we remember the Berlin Wall going down, but I forgot that just a couple months before that, guess what? The Soviets had to wimp out of Afghanistan, surrender, and walk out. So the Soviet system collapsed. They lose in Afghanistan, and the Berlin Wall comes down. And then the other thing is, in the early part of 1990, the Central Committee for the Communist Party had a meeting. And I don't remember reading about this, but that meeting, they conceded and gave up all their political power, which led to a short period of time to 15 of their republics just dissipating and disappearing. So I don't know. I guess you've thought a little bit about, say, April Glaspie. You recall a little bit of that story, I'm sure.
It's true, and what I noticed from your article, I remember 1990, I think I was just going into grad school, and all of these things were happening, and they seemed at the time bewildering. The world was changing so rapidly, and these things seemed to be sort of disparate things that were happening separately. And I think one of the things you did in the essays, you drew them together in a sort of a common theme, and you tied it all together to the U.S. response to the changing world was really boiled down to the meeting between April Glaspie and Saddam Hussein back in July of 1990.
And, you know, there was a little controversy. It remains controversial now whether she really gave the green light. But one thing for sure that you can be certain of is that Saddam Hussein was our ally. We allied with him through all the 80s, helping him fight the Iranians. And after that meeting, and there's documentation of pretty strong words of saying we don't even deal with Arab-to-Arab border disputes. And she met with him in July 25th of 1990. And 1 week later, he invaded. So in his mind, I don't think anybody could argue that he didn't get a green light. So, but then the big thing would be if you're going to try to satisfy all the conspiracies and all. Did our government just blunder, or did our government sort of say, hey, neocons like events that they can respond to, and they certainly got the event that they needed, because then quickly thereafter we essentially declared war, although we didn't go into Kuwait until January of the next year.
And we had a new purpose.
Yeah.
It was interesting, when we were preparing for this, I went back and looked over the transcript, and what I was astonished by, looking at it again, is how friendly the language was between Glaspie and Hussein. We have great friendship, great respect for your country. We know that we'd like to have you have economic success. You could easily see, if the transcript is accurate, how if you're Saddam Hussein, you're feeling pretty good now that they understand.
I don't want to go over the whole article. Maybe nobody will want to read my article, but I do want to mention one other date that sort of fascinated me, because it was July and August when the green light occurred, and the world events were changing, and the Soviets were collapsing. But also, interestingly enough, on 9/11, 1990, wow. Which has to be a coincidence, it can't be related. But 9/11/90 is when George Bush gave a speech to both houses of the Congress. And his speech was entitled Toward a New World Order. And, I remember that very clearly. And my comment was, because, the conspiracy people who were just ridiculed for talking about that, maybe there's going to be a new world order come one of these days, and who knows what would happen. This was the first time I ever remembered somebody in a powerful position said, that is what our goal. And unfortunately, the New World Order is what I saw and see now as being something I consider pretty negative.
Yeah, that's true. And it was I think the defense industry was terrified by the end of the Cold War. The propaganda, the overthrow, the regime change industry was terrified by it. And I remember thinking, what's going to be our foreign policy now? What's going to happen? And they filled the gap pretty quickly.
And whether this is deliberate or accidental events, the neoconservatives always respond. And they did something a few years later, as they were continuing to organize the project for a New America.
New American Century.
New American Century. That was in '97.
Yeah.
And they got together, and boy, you can read all about what they do, but the two major things they wanted was more military spending, and when are we going to attack Iraq? This was the whole thing that they were talking about, and it
was Bill Kristol, Robert Kagan, all of the people that are still allowing control of foreign policy.
Yeah, so I wanted to find out who our heroes were that signed the first letter. I think they were sending that would have gone to Clinton.
Yeah.
So the letter was signed, and I looked at the fourth name. At that particular time, he was a candidate for governor of Florida. His name was Jeb Bush.
Uh-oh.
He signed on there. So somebody told me the other day, well, Jeb Bush isn't too bad, and he looks a lot better than his dad, or his brothers and his dad. And I said, well, I think he has some explaining to do, but guess what? Nobody's going to ask him that question in the debates.
No, and if you look at his circle of foreign policy advisors, they're all the same people, the same gang he hung out with at the time, so it's not very...
So he's more likely, his advisors are more closely to George Bush Jr.
Than Kristol,
the realists. Well, anyway, I hope you'll be interested and tune in, because we will post this article. And I want to thank you for coming on and watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. And
check that out, Ron Paul Institute on YouTube. Excuse me. We have a situation where we know we have an empire. We understand how everything operates as an empire. This isn't this fallacy that we might have understood when we were younger, that we live in this constitutional republic and that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution means something. When people say that it's just a piece of paper. It's true. It's words on a piece of paper. Freedom has to be exercised. It has to happen. It can't just be written down and expect to exist. Your freedom is you standing up and doing the things that you choose to do without harming others, living the lifestyle you choose, and also standing up for the rights of other people to do the same. That way, there is a conscious effort by the populace that you don't have to believe in the way someone lives. You don't have to support it. You don't have to agree with it. You have to support the basis that each individual has the right to live their life as they choose, as long as they're not harming others or other people's property. The whole being offended, I think, is complete BS. You can be offended, but that does not give you extra rights to go after someone because their way of life offends you. Okay, I'm trying to pull this up. It'll go. Having an issue here. Give me a second. Now, okay. One way that an empire, you can tell the death throes of an empire. When the empire, like the American empire, is going too far into debt, their only option is to continue to steal from the public, the citizenry. And in a death throes of an empire, they become more controlling over your money. And this article, I've seen it multiple places, but this one comes out of the freethoughtproject.com. Government orders banks to call the cops when customers withdraw $5,000 or more. Now, again, this is a sign of a death throw of empire, a falling empire. And like I said before, when an empire dies, when it goes into those death throes, this isn't something that's just going to happen overnight. It's something that usually burdens a populace for a period of time before the final collapse. And I think this is another sign of those death throes of a falling empire, a failing empire, because empires always fail. Washington, D.C., in a clear escalation in the ongoing war on U.S. citizens, the Justice Department has recommended that bank employees snitch on customers attempting to withdraw more than $5,000. Federal regulations already require banks to submit a suspicious activity report when transactions conducted or attempted by, at, or through the bank or an affiliate, and aggregating $5,000 or more, according to the handbook for the Federal Financial Institute Examination Council. The banks are required to fill a certain number of SAR reports every month. This forces them to file SARs for perfectly legal actions, such as withdrawing cash. If using the banks as snitches by having them file SARs on bank customers withdrawing over $5,000 cash wasn't intrusive enough, now the feds are advocating that bankers actually call law enforcement themselves. The Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. Justice Department's criminal head said banks may need to go beyond filing suspicious activity reports when they encounter a risky customer. So taking out your own money, something you own, makes you a risky customer? Well, yeah, you are. You're taking your money out of the bank. That's a risk to the bank and the government to track your money. says here the vast majority of financial institutions file suspicious activity reports when they suspect that an account is connected to nefarious activities, said Assistant Attorney General Leslie Caldwell in a speech last Monday, according to prepared remarks. But in appropriate cases, we encourage those institutions to consider whether to take more action, specifically to alert law enforcement authorities about the problem. The remarks indicate that banks may be expected to do more than just file SARs, a responsibility that itself can be expensive and time-consuming. Some banks already have close relationships with law enforcement, said Kevin Rosenberg, chair of Goldberg, Lowenstein, Weatherwax LLP's Government Investigation and White Collar Litigation Group. Ms. Caldwell's remarks speak to moving forward in a more collaborative way, said Mr. Rosenberg. A tip off from a bank about suspicious customer could lead law enforcement to seize funds or start an investigation, Ms. Caldwell said. Don't think for a moment that government won't potentially utilize this as a means of simplifying the seizure of property from innocent people with zero due process. Max Slavo of shftplan.com writes, do you need to withdraw cash to purchase a used car from a private seller? Or perhaps you are pulling out some emergency cash for a loved one? Either one of these activities are now considered suspicious, and your cash withdrawal amounts to even a few $1,000s. Your bank teller is under a legal requirement to alert officials about your suspected criminal activity, and before you argue that you can't possibly be a suspect because you haven't done anything wrong, consider that even being suspected of being a suspect is now enough to land you on a terrorist watch list in America. In 2013, there was a substantial expansion of the terrorist watch list system. It authorized a secret process that requires neither concrete facts nor irrefutable evidence to designate American or foreign as a terrorist, according to government documents obtained by The Intercept. So potentially you can receive a visit from the police, be put on a terror watch list, and or have your assets seized for doing nothing other than simply withdrawing your hard-earned cash from a bank. Let that sink in for a moment. All of that for trying to withdraw your own money from a bank. It's always our safety, always about safety. Just give up a little bit more freedom and exchange it for the warm, fuzzy feeling of safety. Exactly how much more liberty must we give up before we finally achieve the ever-elusive maximum security? It seems everyone is suspect in a police state, USA. And again, it's death throes of a government. And it's real easy to see that both sides, Republicans, Democrats, are always playing the same game. It's always the same deal. They don't ever repeal any laws. Things like the Patriot Act keep getting extended and passed. The Patriot Act. And really, most Americans are not big fans of the Patriot Act. At least I don't know a whole bunch of fans of the Patriot Act. Maybe I'm mistaken. And talking about the Patriot Act, one here out of benswan.com, White House will end bulk phone spying if Congress lets the Patriot Act expire. Do you see that happening? The White House will not use a legal loophole to let the National Security Agency continue collecting the phone records of millions of Americans if Congress lets the Patriot Act expire in June. Section 215, which authorizes the NSA to collect metadata on virtually all domestic landline phone calls, including numbers and call durations, will expire on June 1st. Without a renewal by Congress, which lawmakers within and on both sides of the aisle are divided over, the agency will lose that authority. Earlier this week, the White House said it will not use a legal loophole in the law that would allow records collection to continue for investigations launched prior to the expansion date that concern national security. to Section 215 of the law, which covers the collection sunsets, we will not continue the bulk telephone metadata program, National Security Council spokesman Ned Price said in a statement to Reuters. Allowing Section 215 to sunset would result in the loss going forward of a critical national security tool that is used in a variety of additional contexts that do not involve the collection of bulk data. Section 215 would have been reauthorized under a bill containing other NSA reforms that was defeated by Republicans in the Senate late last year, many of whom feared it went too far in restricting the agency. Republicans now in control of the chamber have yet to propose a plan of their own. National Security Agency reform is also facing renewed discussion in the House, which passed a weaker version of the Senate bill last summer. Lawmakers in the lower chamber proposed a bipartisan bill to repeal the Patriot Act in its entirety Tuesday, which included privacy-focused reforms to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and the 2008 FISA Amendments Act. I just don't see it happening. I really don't. That's not what they do. If they pass anything, it'll always leave a loophole open for things like that, I believe. Okay. I think you might see some people like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, maybe even Dennis Kucinich, I don't know. Maybe they'll stand up against Patriot Act, but the majority of them won't. Okay, let's move on here. I've seen an interesting clip from Reason, and it was Moonshine, the American Rebel Spirit. And I do look at moonshine in that way. It's that, screw the tax man. Government can't tell me what I can produce and put in my body if I'm not harming others. And others that decide to do business with me, aren't, harming other people, and they have that choice. So yeah, it really is the American rebel spirit, and it's a spirit that has always been, I think, kind of a pun here, but underbrewing in the American psyche. So I wanted to play this clip from Reason. I found it pretty interesting, so hopefully you do too. Phone lines will be open after I play this, and we'll continue into more topics. But I'll have open phones if anybody wants to call in, 718-717-8296. Feel free to call in. But let's go ahead and get on this clip here.
Well, I was running channel super high one night on my souped up Chevrolet 49. Top 10 captain because I'm the king of the moonshine here, but it's running free.
Hi, I'm Anthony Fisher with Reason TV, and we're here with Jamie Joyce, the author of Moonshine, A Cultural History of America's Infamous Liquor. Jamie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of people think of moonshine as like Prohibition-era bathtub liquor, and now it's popular with the Brooklyn hipster set. Mm-hmm. What exactly is moonshine?
Moonshine is a clear, unaged whiskey. Generally, it's made from corn, although it's been used, people will use anything that ferments. Historically, they've used just about anything. But generally, it's been corn. It's also been barley. It's also been rye. So a grain that's steeped, unaged. A lot of times people will call moonshine whiskey without the wood or bourbon without the barrel.
Where did moonshine originate? And it's always kind of been associated with law breaking. Can you separate some of the myths from the reality?
Yeah. Moonshining has a long history in the United States. It came with settlers from Europe, the Ulster region. A lot of these...
Ulster in Northern Ireland.
Yes. So you had a lot of the Scots-Irish coming to this country, bringing these traditions with them. And many of them settled in Western Pennsylvania. And so you had a real... movement going on there where, and we can't really call it moonshining at the time because it was legal to make this whiskey, but this was before a time that it was taxed. So when the government in 1791 imposed the distilled spirits tax, then we started to get people who were saying, hey, wait a second, this is not cool. What are you trying to do?
You're talking about the colonial eras, and a big part of the protests against the British is that the new Americans thought they wouldn't have to deal with this kind of stuff anymore. Can you talk a little bit about the Whiskey Rebellion?
Yeah, the Whiskey Rebellion, I think it came about because suddenly we've just had the Revolutionary War, and then you had the Secretary of the Treasury saying, hey, Alexander Hamilton, saying we need to pay for the Revolutionary War debt. In order to do that, we're going to impose a tax on distilled spirits. So this was something that people were very uncomfortable with. This was something where we had just fought a war of independence against unfair taxes. And so suddenly to have the United States government trying to impose this tax, people felt this was very unfair. And so there were organized protests largely in Western Pennsylvania. And this is where the Whiskey Rebellion grew out of. And so you had groups of what they were being called insurgents by the federal government. Yes, these were insurgents.
The names stick around in different contexts.
So these insurgents were going after tax collectors, and it became a violent rebellion ultimately, in which you had President Washington sent out nearly 13,000 troops to quell this rebellion, and he himself led that charge out to Pennsylvania.
Moving forward a little, Prohibition ended in the 30s, but then there was more prohibition of moonshine itself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
After Prohibition, a lot of times people think, well, suddenly the nation could drink again. Well, that's not entirely true. There were still many places throughout this country, and there are still places today that are dry. So in some states, we even have dry counties, wet counties, and within a dry county, wet cities. So there's this real holdover or hangover, perhaps, from Prohibition. So still, you had these communities where this was making this clear, unaged whiskey, liquor. This was also part of cultural heritage. This wasn't just a way to make money, although it was a very good way for many people to make money.
And it was very prominent in Appalachia.
Absolutely, very prominent in Appalachia. But because liquor was still expensive, because jobs were scarce, we're leading into the Great Depression. So there were still people who needed to make money, and they relied on this family tradition of making moonshine. So this was a big economic driver for a lot of people. It kept families afloat. It put food on the table.
Can you talk a little bit about the struggles for moonshiners trying to go legitimate?
Yes. Well, we're talking in the 1800s, the mid to late 1800s, there wasn't really a movement for moonshiners to go legitimate per se, but they were trying to continue their efforts to make their liquor without being detected by the law. And so it was a real cat and mouse game between revenuers and moonshiners. And revenuers were the revenue agents. And these were federal agents that came into play in I believe it was 1861, where we had our first income tax. And liquor was taxed. And if you weren't paying that tax, you could be arrested. And so when you look back at some of the very old, the original IRS tax records, every year the IRS put out yearly bulletins about their activities. These read like Western novels because you have stories of revenue agents riding on horseback up into these hills and valleys, sniffing out corn mash in creeks, really using all of their senses. And it was violent. There were definitely people within these small communities who really, they didn't feel like these moonshiners were doing anything wrong.
Can you talk a little bit about how moonshining led to the rise of NASCAR, which is apparently America's most popular spectator sport?
You had all these people in the South who were coming up as whiskey trippers. That's what they called the drivers, So they were some of the most skilled drivers around. And so it was just natural that they would become involved in NASCAR. One of the people that I write about in my book, Moonshine, is a man that many people, NASCAR fans, would know, Junior Johnson. And Junior Johnson was one of the first inductees in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Now, Junior Johnson, as a young man, starting at about age 14, helped his father with his moonshine whiskey business. So he was one of these guys who would go out at 14 years old, pre-driver's license, but he knew how to drive, and he would deliver the liquor to people. So he knew how to drive fast and skillfully because the law was after him all the time.
Why is moonshine culture really relevant now?
Because we have so many people interested in this do-it-yourself movement, sort of back to these original foods and drink in this country. And so in order to make something, to make this liquor on your own is really exciting to a lot of people. It's under the radar. It's still against the law. It remains against the law to make distilled spirits, even though wine and beer you can make legally.
The title of the book refers to moonshine as America's most infamous liquor. Is there a push for exporting moonshine to the rest of the world? Is there an interest in it?
Well, as we moonshine has a long history in the United States, and because of that, I think it has this mystique that I think is appealing to people in other countries. And in fact, I do know that the folks at Kings County Distillery in Brooklyn, which is the distillery near where I live in Brooklyn, they're starting to export some of their moonshine to Japan. And so there's a real interest in American culture, and this is certainly a deep, deep part of American culture.
Thanks so much for talking to us, Jamie Joyce, the author of Moonshine, A Cultural History of America's...
Stop it there. Reason TV on YouTube. Check them out. One thing that was mentioned here is the getting back to the roots, getting back to doing it yourself. And I think that's a cultural shift that we are seeing here in America. We see a lot more people wanting to go off the grid. We see a lot more people wanting to be self-sufficient. Sorry, got email here. We have more people going, almost digressing in technology to a point. Now, that kind of goes out the window when you start bringing solar into it. But a lot of people are trying to go back to the way things were. And with the advancement of technology, I think there are so many great things that could be accomplished for the future. But I'm also one of those people that I like getting, I like, gardening. I like working with my hands, doing woodwork, working on vehicles, tractor, whatever. I think that there's something about that is the reason behind more and more people leaving Facebook, more and more people kind of going away from the internet. They might stream like maybe this broadcast or UCY or another, radio or Pandora music, but the social media, I think, is starting to break down, and I think it happens once people are getting older, once, people are getting in their mid-20s, they're kind of going, it's a great tool, but it's just crazy. And more people are getting back to roots, you think, because it's something that's real. When you work with your hands, when you have to be self-sufficient, it's more real. And then when they start thinking that way too, I think that's where the whole food freedom thing comes into play. And where the non-GMOs are going, if getting back to our roots helps us some way mentally, getting back to our roots when it comes to our food and being more aware of what we're eating and not doing processed stuff, doing fresh, and then non-GMO, natural. It's been growing on this earth forever. There might be expectation for you to get a little bit healthier, and I think that all still has to coincide with what you're eating and how much, and all of that. But that kind of leads into segues into the next one I have here out of Liberty Beat, and this is something that a lot of people that have gotten into the food freedom. This is a company that they've been fighting against, and I read something about Monsanto talking about we need to do a better job of working with the people and understanding what the market. Well, I personally don't believe it, but whatever. Well, here out of the LibertyBeat.com, Monsanto asked World Health Organization to issue retraction over cancer claims. Again, Monsanto is trying to rebrand itself to be, well, we love the people. Well, here it says, this is just one paragraph, LibertyBeat.com, but you can find the whole article at Reuters. Monsanto is asking the World Health Organization to issue a retraction for its recent report, which found that the company's top product may be causing cancer. Monsanto released a statement calling the report from the International Agency for Research on Cancer biased and inaccurate. Philip Miller, Monsanto's Vice President of Global Regulatory Affairs, said the World Health Organization has something to explain. The Environmental Protection Agency is currently reviewing the safety of glyphosate and will consider the IARC report as part of the review. Now, come on, we've known that there's definitely some type of health risk related to it. This is something that is bleeding into most groundwater supplies. I'm super glad that my well is twice as deep as most wells, definitely in my area, because I go through like 2 layers of bedrock before I get into the well. But most people that don't, they're at more risk of getting the glyphosates in their water, and I think that there's large farming communities that, well, they're rural, and they drink off well systems, and you see a lot of health problems in these areas, especially cancer, and some type of deformation, and whether it be internal, external, and I think mental retardation at points too. And this isn't, everywhere. And, there's a lot of farming communities. I know I'm here in Indiana that are still, you can hook up to a city water supply, but then, you run the risk of what is the city sticking in there. I know there's one city here in Indiana that has been dealing with it. Oh, we've had so much runoff, that's why the water smells. And then we added chlorine, and that's why you might have a chlorine smell, and it tastes funny, and it's okay though. Safe to drink. And I think all this arguing back and forth is all of it basically a show to kind of keep you off of the trail of, well, where's the evidence? And anytime any evidence is usually brought up, they automatically tend to say, well, that wasn't done correctly, so we're not even going to look at it. We don't believe that it was a good research situation, so we're going to disregard that. And I actually got a clip here on food freedom. And this came from Adam Kokesh. Food is the how of freedom, Mike Adams, and the Food Rising. So I'm going to go ahead and cue this up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined today by none other than the health ranger himself, Mike Adams of naturalnews.com. And for years, he has been bringing you not just his story from unhealth to healthy lifestyle and how he cured all of the ills that he was facing with the most powerful medicine available to us as humanity, which is, of course, food. And he's been bringing you the news about how the government has been interfering with the food industry, how major food corporations have been buying off the government for favorable policies. And as you know, he's been a big supporter of the message of freedom. And I'm really excited today to give him a chance to present to you his new project, foodrising.org. Yes, that's food rising like uprising. Why? Because growing food and being food independent is the single most important thing that you can do as a consumer to exercise your choices responsibly and so that you don't have to depend on these centralized systems of control. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Adam. Hey, it's great to join you today, and thanks for the opportunity.
So before we get into the exact technology that you're using for this, can you tell us about why this is an important evolution of your activism from information to giving people the hands-on tools to live more free and healthy?
Absolutely, but let me be clear up front. This is an open source project where we're giving away the do-it-yourself videos, how to make your own systems. We're giving away the downloadable 3D printable parts. We do have systems for sale, but that's not the emphasis. It is make it yourself. We want a network of people to learn how to grow food this way, which is very simple, very easy, highly productive. But why does it matter? Well, because without food freedom, you have no freedom at all, really. If you depend on the system to feed yourself, and most people eat, at least a couple times a day, if you're dependent on the system, then you're really a slave to that system of food factories and food deliveries and food, chemicals and everything else that's out there. So just like we encourage decentralized power, we want individuals to have liberty, to be empowered with solutions for self-defense, whether it's Second Amendment or natural medicine, growing their own herbs and medicine, but also food. So this allows people to grow their own food very, very simply, easily, and super affordably. I mean, a small fraction of the price of grocery store food, and using very little water too. So for those who are in California or Arizona, where the water problems are becoming worse, you can grow food with about 1/20th the water of agriculture in dirt, and that's a huge difference.
Now, this isn't just about efficiency for the sake of growing, but as much as like it is for the bigger picture, being a conscientious consumer of everything. Now, a lot of people don't make this connection very obviously, and I want to point out that this isn't coming from a philosophical perspective of being preachy and saying, yeah, if you buy food at the grocery stores, you're wrong, but you're certainly not living optimally. Now, I like to shop at farmers markets and try to vote conscientiously in terms of consuming food, and that seems like the first step. But obviously the next step is full independence, and making that easier for people, lowering that barrier is a key way to encourage people to be more independent.
Well, you're right that it's not practical for people to grow 100% of their food, but people can grow more and more of their diet more easily with this kind of open source, low-tech technology. And I want to mention something that's hugely important in all this, Adam. This technology works without electricity. So in a power grid failure or a natural disaster or even a war zone somewhere around the world, you can grow food using no electricity, as long as you have sunlight, obviously. And even the parts that I designed for the system that you can print out yourself that I'm showing you here, they use easily scavengeable components, such as a pencil eraser here, a paper clip here, which serves as the hinge. This is a discarded vitamin bottle that actually functions as the float. So you print out these 3D printable parts using filament that you can extrude partially from recycled landfill water bottles.
Hold on, you're jumping way ahead. I mean, this is a beautiful part of the concept, but like we haven't even set the stage here for people that don't know like why this is so important. And I mean, this is like the perfect teaser. We're seeing 3D printed parts. We're seeing recycled materials going into this. But I just want to, make sure that people understand the motivation for this. And, when we met last, we talked about freedom, the message of freedom being the why, the motivation for living free, for living independently. But growing food, being independent from the system as much as we possibly can. And as I've gotten into the one thing that we can't disconnect from is the internet, of being connected to each other. And it's obviously an important way for this technology to come together. But food, electricity, water, I mean, all of these things that we can say, we're not going to support the government-induced corporatist system. It's a really important way for opting out. Now, Mike, just to connect this to all of your previous work as being the outgrowth or evolution from this, what is it that your audience gave you that inspired you to do this when you've seen so many people going, we want to know the truth, we want to be food independent? Is this a response to some specific market demand from your audience?
This is really a response to what can only be called agricultural tyranny on the part of the U.S. government. In most other countries around the world, I mean, even Russia and Cuba, home gardening is considered a common freedom. In America, people are threatened with jail time for growing tomatoes in their front yards. Their home gardens are destroyed by city bureaucrats and government goons, and the FDA cracks down on small farms and wants to over-regulate all of these people that are growing food. We need, if we're going to have food security as a nation and as a family, we need to be able to grow food more quickly, efficiently, easily, and cost effectively. So I explored a lot of food production solutions, hydroponics, aquaponics, different soil gardening techniques, vertical gardens, you name it. And I came to this system, which is called a non-circulating hydroponics based on Professor Kratky out of the University of Hawaii. This is the simplest system, the most effective system for most people to grow enormous quantities of food very simply, very little cost, which of course creates freedom because it creates self-reliance. It creates independence. It means you don't have to stand in line at a government food line one day if that's the way they're handing out, government cheese or something. you don't want to do that.
All right, so most people know that hydroponics is some way that you flush water into the suspended roots of plants in some kind of electricity-driven system. And that's great, but that creates a major obstacle, a barrier to entry, right? You seem to have come up with just the right innovation, the right combination of existing technologies to help average Americans clear that barrier and say, I can get into aquaponics. So explain first, what is the concept of the system, and how do you have hydroponics without electricity?
Right. Well, I want to be clear. I'm not the inventor of the concept of non-circulating hydroponics. It actually came out of Taiwan decades ago, and Professor Bernard Kratky had documented this many, many years ago. It's just that no one's really talked about it in a big way, it seems, because it doesn't use any pumps. There are no circulating systems. There's no oxygen that needs to be pumped in the system, no circuit boards. So, preppers and survivalists love the system because it's EMP proof, right? It's power grid proof. But it works because of something called root specialization. Mother Nature has solved the problems for us because when you suspend plant roots in a system that's partially air and partially water and nutrients, the roots specialize and they become the air grabbers themselves. They replace the need for oxygen diffusing pumps. And some roots suspend in the water and the nutrients, so they become the water grabbers and the nutrient grabbers, and they shuttle that water and nutrients up to the plant using capillary action.
Wait, so are you saying that like this whole time people have been thinking, how do we flush the roots with nutrients? And what they've been doing is missing this huge opportunity that comes if you just lift the plants up like an inch or two and give them air on the top parts of their roots?
It's a breakthrough concept that Mother Nature's had all along. Actually, the roots need about 4 or 5 inches of air and only about 2 inches of water and nutrients at the very bottom for most plants. But yeah, I mean, hydroponics is a great technology. I'm not knocking conventional hydroponics. it grows a lot of food, even commercially. But for the average user, it's too complex. There are too many points of failure. I built an aquaponics system with fish tanks, and there were too many stories of people losing all their food and all their fish. The electricity went out, the fish die in minutes without air, or they jump out, or there's a leak, and then you have a tub full of fish but no water. There were so many problems. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying for the average user, it's too complex. So I wanted a system where I could put some seeds in a grow media and walk away for 5 weeks and come back and have a salad buffet, or strawberries or cucumbers or whatever. And that's what this system is. It's so low maintenance, you can ignore it. It waters itself. There's no weeding. You don't even have to bend over. You can grow them at waist height, and it just works.
So what are people able to grow with this system? What's your pitch in terms of the average consumer? You're going to put in this much effort, you're going to get this much food independence.
Well, right now, the system grows all kinds of garden vegetables. Lettuce is the easiest, but you can grow tomatoes, cucumbers, strawberries, spinach, all kinds of herbs like oregano, peppermint, basil, all kinds of things. Anything you can imagine that's in the greens, Swiss chard, whatever. But with some additions that I'm rolling out and giving away for free also online, the downloadable parts, you'll be able to enhance the system to grow root vegetables. So potatoes, onions, sweet potatoes, turnips, beets, things like that. It turns it into a wicking bed type of arrangement because of the automatic water level float valve. Again, this valve right here. And what's important to note about this, Adam, and again, in alignment with the philosophy of your book, Freedom, this has never been a message of, hey, everybody, buy it from me or use my plan or anything. It's the opposite of that. It's, hey, this is a great idea. You use it. You build your own. In fact, you can print out these parts and sell them at a farmer's market if you want. I totally encourage that. This is the combination of open source sharing of ideas with free market enterprise. I want other entrepreneurs out there to take these ideas and find ways to build maybe small local businesses around them, or even they can charge people for printing the parts while they're providing solutions that help people save money. So,
wait, are you trying to tell me that you're not selling something here? What's going on? What are you selling? What's open source? I mean, this is beautiful, and I want to come back to this because the technology, I'm afraid, is almost just a little bit ahead of its time, which is obviously a good thing because now you can ride some waves. But what is it you're selling? What's the business model here?
Well, that's the beauty of it. The first thing I'm selling is an idea, and I'm actually giving it away. I give people a choice. I believe in choice. Number one, you can make it yourself. I give you the videos. You can download the 3D parts yourself if you have a 3D printer or you know somebody with one. Or you can buy a system already made, but that's my last option. I encourage everybody to make their own systems. In fact, I keep telling people over and over again, make your own systems. And yet people keep ordering it from us because they want it already made. So, I think this is the ethical model of free enterprise with open source sharing. You give people a choice. You empower people with the knowledge. Those who are do-it-yourselfers, they can make it themselves. Those who want the convenience of something already made, they can buy it at a reasonable price. Either way, they're going to save enormous amounts of money on their food bill because they're growing food for pennies on the dollar. So everybody wins in this situation.
So what you're saying is that people, if they buy into this idea that they want to be food independent and they want to do it through this technology of a home-based, non-circulating, electricity-free aquaponics system, that you're giving them plans, they can go from zero assistance of they can look at your website and go, okay, this is what I need. I'm going to be fully food independent. I'm even going to be health ranger independent here. I'm going to be able to just set up my entire system. I'm going to take his information and I'm going to put it into practice all the way. Right. And it seems like there are various degrees up to we hand you the complete package, just add seeds and water. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You just nailed it. And to help get this started, we've donated 250 of these systems to schools and YMCA centers and churches across America. Those are shipping out next week, by the way. Actually, we've received donation requests for 170 at the moment, but we'll hit 250 soon. So we're putting these into the hands of schools all across America. We're showing people how to build their own. They can go out to Home Depot. They can buy buckets and bins and drills, and they can do it themselves. And we totally encourage people to do that. Or they can buy it already made from us. But look, the truth is, Adam, this concept is so powerful that we can't build enough systems for all the people who need the benefits of these systems. We need people to build their own. That's how the food revolution happens. And we need this knowledge base to be out there so that if something does happen with the economy or the banking system or food deliveries or natural disasters, that people don't have to come to me. I don't want them to come to me. I want them to know how to build their systems, grow their own food, print their parts, find a paper clip, find an eraser, do it themselves. That, to me, that's success.
So some of these parts are specialized parts that need to be 3D printed. Is that what you're doing for the products that you're shipping from your facility?
Yes. Here's part of one. These are going out to the school donations. This is about 100 of the float valve adapters right here. There are a few other parts that are part of it, but yeah, people can print them themselves. 3D printers are becoming more and more affordable, just almost by the month, it seems. So I know they're expensive today, but I think in the near future, most households will have a 3D printer to print out common, small parts that they need. I think it'll be as common as a microwave is today at some point, or a PC, for example.
One of the cool things about this is you're taking 3D printing, which is in a sense a technology ahead of its time right now, because most people aren't able to print anything practical, but you've created a system where you're using existing material. You're talking about plastic bins, you're talking about grow baskets, you're talking about seeds, and you take a 3D printer and you're printing just a little junction, a small important part that's unique to this system, which is really cool because you don't have to wait for 3D printing to be this massive thing. Already, Mike here has taken this technology and used it for a small manufacturing operation where he doesn't have to clear all of these major manufacturing hurdles. He can just say, we want 250 units, print them up, make it happen, because we're just printing these small components. And for, someone back home on the block who wants to set up their own system, you don't have to buy all these parts. You can even go next door to your neighbor who's got a 3D printer and say, hey, dude, can I give you a few bucks? I just need this one special piece. And it's a really cool bridge in the technology. So how do you see all of this, both in terms of 3D printing, existing technologies, the new techniques that you're bringing to the mainstream with aquaponics with this, and where we are with food freedom and government regulation? How does this fit uniquely in this point in history?
Well, first, you nailed it with the practical aspects of these 3D printable objects. And just to put this out there, I'm releasing 5 key inventions this year that are all 3D printable, like this. But the next one, Adam, the next invention will allow you to remove arsenic from contaminated well water. So it can save many, many lives all around the world. It's a real breakthrough invention that combines atomic elemental science with 3D printing and water sources to get you clean water. So there's 3 more after that. So where does this fall in history? Well, I think that 3D printing is the new industrial revolution. I really do. I think it can empower people with liberty, with decentralized power to create objects yourself that you used to have to get from centralized sources and long supply lines from China, for example. I brought a commercial float valve here. This is made in China. It has metal parts, and if the ports are shut down, as they were recently, you can't get it. This, you make yourself. You scrounge parts around your house, a pencil eraser, a paper clip, you print this part, you're done. So this gives the power of object creation to individuals, which is really, I believe this is going to play a fundamental role in liberty. Cody Wilson, of course, at Defense Distributed, he demonstrated that he could print gun parts on a 3D printer. That's not my focus, but it just shows you that there's this huge spectrum of things that can be printed on 3D printers that can be very practical and that have enormous potential for individual liberty.
So this technology is changing the equation for a lot of people. And if you were on the cusp of, do I grow my own food? Do I just shop conscientiously? How independent can I be? This is something that you need to look into to see, does this fit into my lifestyle, how I want to live more free? And for a lot of people who think that this revolution of achieving a free society is going to be about storming the barricades or about an election or taking out a politician or a military or a police force. I mean, really, you want to fight the police state, separate it from its corporate masters, This is how you do it. You want to be free. It's an evolutionary process, not a revolutionary process. You don't have to storm the barricades. You don't have to risk your life. All you have to do is assert your own freedom and independence. And this is a critical way of doing it. The powers that be, the thing they fear most is your independence, your ability to not need them. If you're fighting them, if you're resisting them, they know how to deal with you. But the minute that you can show the world, we don't need the system, we don't need your control, we don't need your violence, that's when they really lose. Mike, if you would please, just to sum this up, what is the last thing that you would want to say to the Freedom Line audience about why it's important to be food independent and how this technology is a key enabler in that?
Well, first I want to encourage those, your listeners and viewers, to take this idea and run with it. Enhance this. Maybe you can come up with a better part system than I did. Maybe you have a better way to grow food. We'd love to help promote that. Foodrising.org is the website where we'll be posting your ideas and your 3D parts as well. So this is a community of liberty-minded people, of even organic food consumers and vegans. You know, it's everybody from liberty and preppers to vegans and people who do, juicing of vegetables. Everybody needs food, and everybody wants to be free. This is the system. The Food Rising system gives you both food and freedom, and it's yours for free. You can download it for free. You can watch the videos for free. You can make it yourself with my blessing, with the blessing of other people who are doing this. This is not about corporate greed. This is not about government coercion. This is about individual innovators, inventors who believe in freedom and who believe in sharing ideas that work for humanity. So be part of it.
Don't fight for freedom, grow it. Foodrising.org. Check it out. Get involved today.
Okay, I thought that was really important to share. Foodrising.org. Now, when we look at freedom, food freedom, it's something that we have to actively practice. And, this whole labeling GMO. Now, I would like to see GMOs labeled. Don't get me wrong. But I think that becomes less important to the major thing where you say, I won't participate in it. I'll grow my own non-GMO. I'll only purchase non-GMO. I want these companies to be open and, the farmers, maybe if it's going to be in the commercial market, I want to deal with the ones where the farmers are open, the companies are open with the farmers they use. And, if it comes down to it, you want to go visit the farm and see how they operate it. A lot of local places are already like that. A local farm that sells fruit and veggies and whatever. We'll ask to tour it. They'll show you how they operate and everything. Well, if we could get the companies to do that would be awesome. But your participation in the market is one thing that really influences stuff. This has created a market where now you can go to most mainstream supermarkets and purchase non-GMO, no preservatives, the whole list goes on, no hormones, cage-free eggs, organic fed. You can get the organic milk at mainstream stores now. And I think with the movement, I think that you're going to start seeing the ability, if the market keeps pushing for it, which I think that it's getting to that point where you might eventually start seeing raw milk on store shelves. That's the influence that you have that has the biggest impact. You might not be able to get the legislation passed that says they have to label GMO, but you can influence the market to the point where it becomes more profitable when they are putting out non-GMO, when they become more open, where, you know, you can see the practices. And that's why I like going to the farms to buy my stuff. When I go to the orchard to get my apple cider, my honey, you know, apples, I know that they're organic. I see their process. They'll let you tour the place. And I think the market is the biggest influence, and more creative ideas are also where, you know, I think many people have seen the different 2-liter setups that people have done, where you can put 2 liters and cut them out and turn them into planters. I've seen ones where you can put them on their side at a 45 and have, you know, the dirt in it with the top cut out, well, the side of the 2-liter cut out on one side, and put your soil in there, and it just goes down. Each one drains into the next one, so where it collects the water, it can just feed all of those plants. You know, seen the hangers, people making hanging ones out of it. You know, those planters that you can plant stuff upside down. I've seen 2-liter, you know, DIYs where you can make those using a 2-liter. So, you know, there's many ways that people can be creative to allow other people to say, you know, if I can't get the non-GMO, or I don't trust the sources that the non-GMO might be coming from, which I've heard people argue that, and, you know, that could be a legitimate argument. Give people that don't have the area ideas and maybe new products that allow them to produce organically in small areas. And even though I'm not a big city person, mainly because of how politics are ran in cities, and usually more violence in the cities, you know, I've seen creative ideas where they come up with creations where the whole apartment building also works as a greenhouse where people can garden and grow, where they can sell and trade without ever having to leave the building, which kind of would make me a little claustrophobic. I'm someone that likes the freedom to travel, therefore I use it, so that wouldn't maybe be as, you know, appealing to me. But, you know, it's a great idea for people that do like living in the city, do like the condo or apartment feel. And, you know, I know a lot of people that are like that. They like living in the city. That's where they want to be. And that's fine. You know, those are just personal preferences. But we need to be able to be free to pursue what we believe to be the healthiest route for us. And I think the market is the best way to start doing that. Okay, give me a second while I get this article up here. Okay, I got this out of liberty.me. This one from Jeffrey Tucker, tucker.liberty.me. Ted Cruz thought he had a captive audience when he spoke at the campus of Liberty University. 10,000 students sat there attentively, all required to attend as part of the discipline of campus life. Floating above the crowd in a way that no one could see was a different world of information. Students were using Yik Yak to make fun of the guy, mocking his every sentence. Some smart cookie among the media picked up on it and reported its politics, so the revelation became national news. Now the yak is out of the bag and it's a big deal. Yik Yak is the chat application that has swept all before it, but only among a small demographic 25 and under. It's been around a little more than a year, but the app is already valued at $350 million. Remarkable, especially given the notable simplicity of the idea and its function. It combines chat and GPS to allow anonymous talk in your locale. What it does is reveal the truth, unvarnished by the intentions of the planners who purport to rule our world. The parents who pay for the kids to attend Liberty University have one set of political and moral values, but they can't control what the students think and do on their own time. Increasingly, and especially with anonymous chat, what constitutes the students' own time is the whole of their digital lives. This is why Yik Yak has been banned in select school districts around the country, due to the potential for being used and abused for cyberbullying. But of course, such bans are completely unenforceable. Whatever else you do, don't download and use application X. This is probably the best advertisement that any mobile app can get. But truly, the content of Yik Yak can be harrowing, depending on where you are. The chats can be fun, clever, and wholesome, or shocking, vulgar, pornographic, and yes, abusive. It's what you get without censorship. So prepare yourself. Now that Yik Yak is in the national news, we can cue the inevitable hysteria among the bourgeoisie. The handwriting and pearl clutching will go on for months. School boards will debate, pastors will decry, politicians will condemn. But in the end, nothing is going to stop the free flow of information that Yik Yak presents. We do well to recall that this has always been the course of internet innovation. Before the web, there were chat rooms, and they were stuffed with morally objectionable content. And when the web went live, the two uses were predictable: porn and religion. There's nothing new about this. It was the same with the printed book that eventually became the mass market paperback. These two sectors of life are the early adopters of any new technology. Right now, we are in the Wild West period of geographically centered anonymous chat. As time goes on and the applications become more mainstream, they adapt to reflect the values of users. This will happen to Yik Yak too, as it gradually builds in content filters that reflect not political wishes, but the tastes and temperaments of users themselves. The story of the application itself is truly fascinating. It was developed in late 2013 by Tyler Droll and Brooks Buffington, who were recently graduates of Furman University. Droll was in medical school and Buffington was pursuing a career in finance. But both dropped out once they developed the app and it started taking off. Now they live and work in Atlanta, improving the software by the day. Over the last couple of years, as Facebook has slipped into a state of non-use by the younger generation, people have asked what the next thing will be. Instagram, Snapchat, texting with WhatsApp, Kik, and hundreds of other apps are all in the running. And truly, it won't be just one. The social realm is decentralizing and disintermediating. Yik Yak really does something different. It taps into our desire, too often forgotten amid the excitement of globalization, to actually be somewhere and in some physical proximity with a localized culture. So the default is to show you exactly what's happening, where you happen to be. From here, you can post anything, upvote other people's posts, and contribute the ongoing formation of a cloud-based conversation. Who's posting? It can be anyone, your neighbor, the guy next to you in class, someone at the gas station down the street, that person walking her dog, and so on. People are careful not to give too much information so that their identity can be discovered. I laughed at one posting I recently saw. I'm so happy with my yak, has so many upvotes, but then I remembered that no one knows it's me. You can also use the app to travel and spy on any locale in the world, going from town to town to see what people a certain demographic are talking about. But you can only contribute by chatting and voting if your geographic range matches where you are in the application. In this way, Yik Yak remains highly localized. Like all brilliant digital innovations, the simplicity of it is very striking, but it's not so simple because it took these two entrepreneurs, Joel and Buffington, to think it through and act. In years past, people would ask, how can something like this make money? What actual value can it add to the world in a way that is commoditable? People used to say this about Facebook, of course, but finally the lesson is starting to sink in. The value is the attention, the eyeballs, the use, the network. How it comes to be monetized is a flexible challenge that can only be addressed but much less met once the network is assembled. Then there is a larger question: what is the social value of such a platform? Isn't it just wasting everyone's time? Well, the question is hard to answer in advance of the way we see it being used in real life. 6 months ago, most of what happened on Yik Yak seemed ridiculous. Suddenly, overnight, we can see the power in a platform like this. It allows people to get the word out, to speak their minds, even under conditions in which it would be otherwise seem not impossible or even dangerous. It is another way around those who seek to control us. It's another example of a dumb network with entirely smart end-user applications. I'm delighted by such technologies because they defy the imaginations of intellectuals and planners who think they know how to run the world. We live in an age of nonstop experimentation, with entrepreneurs trying to discern the changing needs of people who constitute the acting units of social order. It is a world of progress which made possible through creativity that comes from expected places. In the course of this evolution, where do we find the highest value? It's in our conversation, in the sharing of ideas, the kaleidoscope mixing and melding of random ideas, filtered and sorted and remixed by individual minds. In short, our Yik Yak is the most valuable commodity. Now think about that. Think about that real quick. Has our social media, has our interacting with each other over the internet, over texting, over phones, over, even if you go back, books before phones were even around, this has always been the most valuable tool. It's been the most valuable tool for the progression of humanity. And it's also been the most valuable tool that rulers have always tried to censor and control the populace. Ideas and information have always been the thing that have kept people free. It's when the information gets censored, when it gets propagandized, where you don't have the freedom to go, well, what's going on here? What's can I look at different views of something? And if you can't look at different views and you're only getting one side of a story, then you can't really come to, you might be able to come to the conclusion that I don't believe what they're telling me, but you don't even have a basis to go off of. This is how rulers like to control populace, because you can't argue with people because you can't provide any new information. It's the only information out there is what they're feeding you. And things like Ted Cruz, a lot of people want to cheer him on in the Tea Party, but, I don't cheer any of them on. But if you would say pick the lesser of the evils, I think Rand Paul would be a lesser of the evils, and still, I don't think that he has true libertarian values. I think he has libertarian ideas on many things. But then, just like anybody, there's a little hypocrisy in it all. And things like Yik Yak, the speech, and you notice that, well, this is Liberty University, and these young adults are not interested. They think this guy's a joke. Why? I'll tell you why. He's a politician. He mentions that in the article they try to talk about, I can't remember if it was Jeffrey or who it was talking about, but that just because their parents, and it's Liberty University, and that reflects their parents' ideology, that they don't, that, it might say or make you think that maybe they don't believe in liberty or freedom. But that's not, they might have a deeper libertarian philosophy. Well, someone with a deeper libertarian philosophy might look at Ted Cruz and go, you're not the guy. It'd be interesting to see the response. Maybe someone like Ron Paul would get there. Maybe Jeffrey Tucker or Lou Rockwell. Who would be able to grab the attention of the youth? And things like Yik Yak might be a way for you to find out. Because in this app, their identity is not given up. Therefore, they can say whatever. So what they truly feel will come out. This is a way for information to be freer. It's back to that anonymous type interacting. And people go, why do you need to be anonymous on the internet? Why do you need to be anonymous? Well, because people like you that are already judging the person for being anonymous, maybe they don't want to be personally attacked for their views. And being, someone that wants to freely just express their views. They don't want the argument. They don't want the conflict. They want to put their view out there. You put your view out there. Don't attack each other, but put your views out there. Argue the facts. Well, this gives people that ability to interact without feeling like they will be personally attacked. If they were at Liberty University and they were saying these things and it was coming up in their name, do you think they would have felt safe of not having some type of retribution from the university? Definitely after it's national news that kids were making fun of Ted Cruz. That made us look bad. You will have to pick up community service with our university. This is a tool, and I think it will be a powerful tool in the future, too. Again, tucker.liberty.me. Okay. I have one here about Rand Paul. BenSwan.com. Rand Paul sounds off on indefinite detention. Next president of the United States must support the entire Bill of Rights. Kentucky Senator and possible presidential candidate Rand Paul met potential voters at Felucino Vineyard in Hollis, New Hampshire on Saturday, March 21st. Republican New Hampshire Senator Kevin Avard, a Paul supporter, emceed the event and attracted over 100 first-in-the-nation primary voters. The potential GOP field seeking the party's nomination is expected to be wide, with Chris Christie, Ted Cruz, and Lindsey Graham making recent visits to the state. Paul presented his case with what he says sets his campaign apart from others, a strict adherence to the entire Bill of Rights. Paul stated that as a group, elected GOP lawmakers support the Second Amendment, but that wasn't enough. But you want to defend the whole Bill of Rights. You can't defend the Second Amendment if you don't support the First Amendment. You can't defend the Second Amendment if you don't defend the Fourth Amendment, Paul said. Regarding the Fourth Amendment, Paul turned to the National Defense Authorization Act's indefinite detention clause found in Section 1021, which reads, the disposition of a person under the law of war may include the following: detention under the law of war without trial until the end of the hostilities authorized by the authorization for use of military force. Paul said, we now have a law on our books called indefinite detention. An American citizen can be detained without a trial. You want to know what the president said? He said, I'm signing this. I'm troubled by this, but I'm signing this. But look at me. I'm a good man and I will never use this. We won't get into the discussion of whether this is true or not, but the thing is, laws are not about one individual, but who comes after them. When asked for comment, Panda, People Against National Defense Authorization Act, Jason Casella, had this to say about Paul's remarks. Though it's excellent to see the indefinite detention provisions and laws of war now contained in the NDA are finally a topic of discussion for presidential hopefuls, the rest of the country has been taking action for years. It remains to be seen if the discussion moves to action in the 2016 race. But time and again, it has been proven that if people of America want their rights protected, it will be the people themselves to do it. Some of Senator Paul's potential primary opponents have also weighed in on the NDAA. Ted Cruz, also a vocal opponent of the provision, stated in his reasoning for voting against the 2014 NDAA, I voted against the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm deeply concerned that Congress still has not prohibited President Obama's ability to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens arrested on American soil without trial or due process. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina on U.S. citizens suspected of having ties with Al Qaeda under NDAA Section 1021 guidelines. And when they say, "I want my lawyer," you tell them, "Shut up, you don't get a lawyer." New Hampshire State Senator Kevin Abard had this to say about Senator Paul's presentation. "We need to be the party that defends not only the Second Amendment, but the First and Fourth and Fifth, meaning the Bill of Rights, and reach out to all groups in our society. National defense is the highest priority, but also is our national debt, which is a part of our security." The most recent poll, NBC News, Morris, taken in New Hampshire, has Senator Paul in third place at 14% behind Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker at 15 and former Governor Jeb Bush at 18. While the senator has libertarian-leaning roots, some of the Libertarian Party are split on Paul's GOP candidacy. According to the Daily Beast, Nevada LP Chair Brett H. Perjonas stated that libertarian is now just a buzzword for Republicans like the Kentucky senator. If Senator Paul was a libertarian, well, okay, then join the Libertarian Party. With many undecided voters lingering in the Granite State, Paul's presentation made this impression of New Hampshire resident Keith DeSantis. Senator Rand Paul emphasized not only the importance of the Bill of Rights, but why the Bill of Rights are important. His platform is focused on defending the entire Bill of Rights instead of a single right or issue. It's the message, I think, that appeals to a lot of people on both sides of the political spectrum. Now, when you look at where it talks about, the libertarian, well, not everybody's that's libertarian goes, well, why doesn't he join the Libertarian Party? Because there's a big libertarian group that doesn't believe in political parties. Because libertarian is really focused on the individual rights. Therefore, you also don't judge someone on their race, their religion. You base your view on people for who they are. Not who their dad was or who their great grandfather was. You base it on who are you, what do you do, what do you believe, how do you practice your beliefs in life. And it also is on the rights of people. Therefore, even if you dislike the way they live, you can't abridge their rights. You might be able to be vocal about, how you believe someone should live, but you don't have a right to attack them or their property. And I see so many libertarians get one thing wrong, and I think that if you truly look at liberty and freedom, you also, in the world we live in, we also have to look at ways to reach other people, to, even if you can't completely convert them, you can make them start questioning things more, not allow so much to happen. But it's reaching people. When I see people that spout out libertarian ideas, but they are constant trying to be do you do anything for the cause of liberty? Do you think you're going to help create a society where you can practice your freedom? Or do you think you're feeding into exactly what the establishment wants you to do. Because if you look at where we are, where we have been going, what they have been doing, it's been the easiest thing for them to do, and that's divide and conquer. As long as they can keep you divided and conquered, guess what they're doing? They're getting rich. They're creating dynasties. They're creating, a utopia for them and a slave world for you. Even people that consider themselves pretty wealthy, oh, I make 100,000, 200,000 a year, don't understand. Because they're still limited. What happens when America's collapsing? When the economics, it eventually will. There's no if, ands, buts about it. It eventually will. No empire lasts. None. It eventually will. It might not happen today, tomorrow, next 20 years. It might not happen. But it eventually will. Well, those people that, I buy things and I make good money. I'm wealthy. I'm up there. No, the real rich and wealthy people are the ones that have freedom to travel throughout the world. They have no limits or bounds. They have every ability to go wherever they need or want. And when you look at things like withdrawing $5,000 in cash from a bank might put you on a suspect list. When you see things like the NDAA, indefinite detention, when you see things like the spying on your cell phone, when you see the things like the, deliberate attacks on your freedom, do you think that you making $100, $200, $300, $400,000 a year is going to help you? Because most of those people also have it in a bank with asset forfeiture, with the ability for them to take your property, eminent domain. How much wealth do you really have? But when you look at them, and probably the most powerful people are the ones that can print as much money as they need. When not only can they print it in your currency, but other countries' currencies if they need. And they can transfer numbers and just be like, well, I own everything anyway, so we'll just print it off in this currency over here. But they turn around and tell you that, well, you owe and your kids will owe this much. Who has the wealth? They've created dynasties. They've created an empire. And what they're working on more and more is a world empire. When people talk about libertarians or globalists, well, no, we're for individual freedom globally. The true globalists are the ones that want to take the central control and utilize it worldwide. And we know when these people